Welcome to Dwarven Forge Live. This is our Reliquaries panel on modern fantasy? Modern fantasy. Rule sets of, I don't know, we're hanging out, we're talking about stuff.
Modern stories
What are we
with
doing,
fantasy
Chris?
Rule sets. Modern story, we talked about this for like a solid half hour today.
Well, we're in day 16 of our Kickstarter, and the madness has set in. Captain's log. I'm trapped here in Dwarven Forge Studios, losing our minds. But luckily we have reinforcements here. We've got Amy, Jude, and Brennan here to provide maybe some intelligent words that we otherwise are having a hard time with. But I am Nate. I'm joined here in the battle station across the room by Chris. Woo! And we have three amazing guests. Before they introduce themselves, what do we have going on tonight? Is there anything that we need to tell viewers to prepare themselves for this verbal apocalypse that we're about to unleash?
I don't think you're selling us very well.
Okay. 16 days. I don't know.
If you've seen any of our kind of panel conversation interview streams we've done, I think this is like the seventh in nearly twice as many days.
You would have it down by now.
Yeah. It's going to be mostly just a kind of a loose conversation. We just wanted to use this as an excuse to talk to a bunch of really cool people in the industry. And that's kind of the same thing tonight.
Well, we have our Kickstarter going on for Reliquaries, which are cool thrones for holding your dice. And as we were putting them together, we were saying, this is really as a celebration of gaming, right? The dice are the focal point upon which many of these games hinge. Unless you played Amber Diceless role-playing. I don't know if that... Was that in, like, the 90s? I don't know. Did anybody read the Roger Zelazny Nine Princes in Amber? It was a whole series. They made a role-playing game that had no dice. It was wild. But anyway, dice
the Courts of Chaos. I know Zelazny.
Yeah!
Yeah, Amber. I know Amber. Yeah, hell yeah.
Well, it was a role-playing game with no dice. So it was like, based on the books. It was very
What's
clever.
the mechanic in Amber? Sorry, I haven't played that one.
Yeah. It was a bidding. There were different things, and one person was always the best. You would bid in the beginning of the game against the other players for what you were going to be best at, and so everybody got ranked in things. So you would try and maneuver every conversation or situation to a thing that you were good at because you were really only good at one thing and kind of various scales of other things. So it was this very interesting because it was just like that, the various siblings all vying for power. It was pretty neat mechanic. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what was going on tonight. We are celebrating gaming because we're celebrating Reliquaries. Kickstarter's live right now for one more day, 24 hours, 25 hours left. So you can check it out. There's a link on the internet somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Tabletop Santa brings up a good point. There's also Alice is Missing, which is making a lot of waves lately.
The chat keeps us honest.
Yep.
Anything else people need to know before we dive in with some hard-hitting questions? Do you guys know there's going to be hard-hitting questions tonight?
I do now.
Okay.
We're going to be
I am
doing...
prepared to pretend my internet has gone out at any time.
We're gonna be doing a giveaway about halfway through, in roughly a half hour, 35, 40 minutes, somewhere around there, based on the flow of the conversation, for $50 of credit for our Reliquaries Kickstarter, which will cover most of a hero. We'll get you some of the smaller sculpts. So just hang around for that. It's gonna be pretty simple to give. It's gonna be pretty simple to do, and it's available internationally. So no matter where you are, you can enter and win that.
All right.
May I show off that you all were kind enough to mail me a couple of goodies?
Yeah. Let's.
We'll allow
I
it.
would like to see.
Ooh.
They're so pretty.
Oh, what die do you have in there?
My little rainbow.
Oh,
See how well they hold dice? I mean, it's unparalleled. There's really
User error on that one.
internet problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, stunning.
Did we send you a remote control with that so you can get it out of disco mode? Or okay.
Okay, thank God. Thank God.
Although, why would you? But if I wanted to.
Woo!
There we go.
Behold the disco
I
orb.
love it.
Thank you. Like, frankly, everything y'all do is stunning, but these might be my new faves.
I do
they're
like
so
that
pretty.
of all the different cultures we've got represented in these sculpts, the one that we gave like the disco capability
yeah, I
to
love
was
that
the
one.
elves.
Elves are known for disco Madness? No.
Something like that.
Well, all right. So let's get jamming. So first of all, can you guys let's introduce? You want to give me your quick elevator pitch? Why the heck are you on the internet? Or why? What's your 2-sentence bio? Why we're here? And we'll go. Let's go, ladies. First down to the bottom. Amy, what's going on down there? Who are you?
That's me. My name is Amy Dallen. You might know me from various places on the internet, from DC Daily to Geek and Sundry, but my current home is over at Fandom Tabletop, which is home to the Cortex system and also to a little thing called D&D Beyond, where we get to, to make cool tools and some neat stuff that supports it, some of which may feature a certain co-panelist today. Tune into Battle for Beyond. The next episode is tomorrow, and you're going to love it so much. So I have a lot of reasons to be excited, which works out because that's my favorite thing. And I'm thrilled to be here.
We should talk about Battle for Beyond on here tonight because it's pretty wild. So Jude, which way are you? I can't see the screen.
Yeah, hi, hello.
What's going on? What's your elevator?
My name's Jude, or known as MermaidRoyal on the internet. My pronouns are she, they. I'm your local chaotic bisexual. I'm a variety broadcaster here on Twitch, and also a TTRPG performer and producer. Lately, I've been in Debt's Divinity, which is the first all-fat, all-queer D&D 5e actual play that's live every Friday at 8:30 EST over on my channel. And we are going to probably kill an 800-year-old Gorgon lady tomorrow, and I'm very excited about it. But yeah, that's where you can find me. That's all the stuff that I do.
Woo! That was a fast and concise elevator pitch. I love it. And Brennan, what's your deal? Uh-oh, you're frozen. Oh.
Hello. No, I'm back. Can you hear me? Is my hello? My name is Brennan Lee Mulligan. Hello, my name is Brennan Lee Mulligan. And I am the host and creator of Dimension 20, which is College Humor's actual play D&D, actual play TTRPG show. You can find me there. Cast member for College Humor, play a series of CEOs on the internet. Also, I am so happy to be coming to you from a different continent than the normal America one where I live. And so in that place, it is a different time. And let me tell you, the internet doesn't always work so great. So you ever see me and you see like, hey, Brennan seems to be a little bit checked out. I'm not checked out. I'm riveted. It's just that the internet froze my face.
Seriously, did you like the best?
Was that comedically perfect? Did it freeze my face at a perfect comedic moment?
Unreal.
I'm trying not to laugh because tech issues suck, but this is great.
You couldn't have planned that any better.
You were like this, like frozen. It was like can't even. Well.
Oh no! Internet got jokes, I guess.
Well, the internet wanted to give you a handicap. It wanted to like slow you down.
There you go.
Give it too wild. All right, so let's first I want to ask. I'm curious about what's everybody's RPG origin story. Like, where did you get your storytelling superpowers? Right? How did each of you fall into this wonderful tabletop gaming? Who wants to go first?
And I'll go. I'm technically a baby when it comes to actual tabletops and D&D. I only started playing D&D back in January of this year on a little show called From Dusk to Dark, which is a Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign over on Twitch. But I have a BA in acting. I've been acting since I was like 7. I was also that person who was on like the Tumblr like Word RP forums in like 2012. Like yes. RP has been in my blood for a while. It just took a very long time for me to actually get to like RP to like tabletop. But yeah.
Have you was it a supernatural transition for you? Not supernatural, a very natural. Supernatural transition, a witch transformed you from an actor to a TTRPGer.
TTRPGer. I fell in love immediately. I was like, oh, this is fun and I want to do this all the time. Who wants me to play games with them? So I was like, I started with From Dusk Till Dark, and then like a few other people like tapped me for things, and I was like, yes, please, all of them, give them to me immediately. And it was very fun for me because like once I got my acting degree, for those who don't know, I have fibromyalgia and like chronic pain. So like I was no longer able to like do theater in the way that I used to. So like TTRPGs have given me like an outlet to like actually use my degree and my skills and my passion in a way that I wouldn't be able to otherwise, which is so exciting and enthralling.
It's magical.
I love that. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So like along the path for me are very many like RPG adjacent things. I played in an email sim in the 90s where we pretended to be the kids of the X-Men. I did chat room sims. I like all these sort of middle ground steps, but I was not actually in although I've heard about like the Tumblr word-based RP scene circa early 2010s. Can you tell us sort of like what's the brief version of how that worked?
Yes.
And you don't have to ask permission to ask questions. You can like, this is an open, like anybody can ask questions. If there's something interesting, dig in.
Take Nate's place.
It would depend on like who was running it, but basically like someone would decide that they wanted to do a certain concept. I'm sorry about the motorcycles outside. I don't know what they're doing. So someone started like a Harry Potter era like RPG, and like a friend of mine was in it, and they were like, hey, you should like quote unquote audition for this. Which how it would work is you would audition via like a one shot basically that you would write, and you would submit it to whoever was in charge, and like they would like review it and be like, all right, you're onboarded, you're gonna be announced, make your account. So then it would be like little tiny circles of accounts, like little tiny like hubs that like you would all follow each other, and like so you would have that special account. It was very like, as I'm thinking about it now, very convoluted, but like there was a group of like 20 to 30 of us where like people had like both like original characters from like Harry Potter, but then also like original characters that they made. Like I remember I had a character named Adelaide Tonks who was Tonks's child, and her face claim was Katy Perry at the time that Katy Perry had blue hair. And that's a very like distinct memory for me. But yeah, so it would basically work like that, like little tiny guilds essentially of people who like would write stuff together. And like
you would submit a piece of short fiction, and that would become part of the shared reality, and other people would sort of reflect.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yep. And anyone could reply. There would be like closed ones where only like certain people could reply. Like Tumblr 2012 was a time, and like I don't think me as a 25-year-old would go back to it now, but I like think about how like incredible like it is and was.
Well, it's you can't stop collaborative storytelling, right? Like there's these, we'll find a way, right? There's a lot of different outlets. TTRPG is one of them. It's amazing. People will find a way to make it happen. Huh. Amy, how did you get your how'd you get your storytelling superpowers?
Well, I can certainly speak to how I got intro to RPGs. I'm working on the superpowers, but I am luckier than a lot of people in that I got introduced very early. I was in elementary school, 4th or 5th grade, and my friend's little brother was also friends with my brother, and weirdly, like the three, like my brother and me and our friend became like a little unit, because, and I don't know how he came across it, but like simultaneously we were playing with like DOS video games where like Bard's Tale and the discovery of actual D&D are all mixed up in my brain, because they were just one thing that we received. So we were playing our highly adapted, more or less rules-less version of elementary school Dungeons and Dragons pretty swiftly from that point. But then from there, I eventually got in a couple of more formal games, which was a fun transition. And then, like, high school, fell in with the World of Darkness kids, discovered a whole wonderful other side of role-playing games. And it's just been, I've been lucky enough to have at least one campaign in every edition back to second now. But I also, like, I'm sort of system agnostic. Like, you got a game, I want to know what it is.
You just want to play.
And I love that about TTRPGs. And it's been just truly a joy to be like, because if we had our stuff together as a community, we would have been at, like, the Tumblr crew in 2012 being like, y'all are going to love this. It just took us some time to put all those pieces together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally know what you mean. And plus, you sort of, I don't know, you're in this sphere, you're not thinking maybe necessarily outside the sphere of who else would want to come into this party. I don't know. You also, don't you still play Bard's Tale on Twitch? Am I making this up? Haven't you played
Play
through
a
the
lot
whole
of retro
series?
games. I've been going through the King's Quest series and a
Yeah,
lot
it
of
was
other
King's
old
Quest.
adventure
That
games.
was, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
Delights.
that was-
delights me.
And Brennan, how did you? What was your RPG origin story? Where did you?
I was, steeped in this world for a long, long time. My mother was a comic book writer, so I was going to Comic-Con and other nerdy such events as a wee little one. It was '96 San Diego Comic-Con that my mom bought me my first box of Magic the Gathering cards. Someone had stripped like 1,000 cards of all the rares and then was just selling the commons and uncommons for like $40. So that was my own. And she was basically like, I think you would dig this game, put up a notice in our LGS, shout out to LGS, support your local game store. And there's a incredible, basically when I was 10 years old, I got turned on to these games. And the rest, as they say, is history. I need to shout out Jude, by the way, because that 2012 Tumblr scene cut to a few years earlier on your live journals or your Zangas out there.
LJ!
We were lighting up AOL Instant Messenger with those free-form roles.
Yes.
We're talking AIM, baby. And I'm talking
I
circa.
forgot about it for now, but yeah.
Yeah, we're talking circa 2004. I want to say we're talking AIM has that fresh new car smell. Like this is the newest part of the internet, and we are getting our role play on. So I have nothing. I can't describe the like shock of my own nervous system memory, Jude, when you were like, yeah, you would submit and then someone would like approve you to be onboarded. I don't know about your Tumblr community that you had, but the kind of intense power trips that would happen being like, someone being like, look, I manage a very exclusive 15-person AOL Instant Messenger Gundam /fic portal. And you need to understand that if something that you write about building-sized robots get intimate with each other does not pass muster, you will be ejected from this group quite quickly, sir. Quite
there are
quickly.
like intense rules that you would have to sign, like a whole document of like 15 to 20 rules that you would have to like abide by. You have to like post a certain amount, and if you don't, like you get kicked, and then like
those are
it's
tough.
communicated
Yeah.
from like the adjacent circles as well. So like you wouldn't be able to apply to any other
You were blacklisted?
RP. Yeah, you'd be blacklisted essentially from like that. It was wild.
What happened that you needed like a 3-page document of rules? Like, who was this? Like, who was the rule breaker that like
unmoderated
destroyed
internet?
everything?
There's, it's like too many rules, or just not nearly enough. It's all about that sweet spot,
So,
Judging by the conversation we had before the stream started, I don't think Outback Steakhouse would have been allowed to roleplay.
Outback Steakhouse, not part of it. So this is an interesting. So, what's kind of awesome is both of you, or all of you, were telling stories very rules light or no rules whatsoever, like collaborative storytelling. So I guess it begs the question, like, how important do you think mechanics are to the storytelling of RPGs? Right? If you're able to tell collaborative stories about them, how important is it to games? I guess it's a two-part. I guess one for stream games where there's an audience, and one for games at home, like, because stream games is a whole other animal. Anybody?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the system. Like, I think that, like, for example, PBTA systems are very, like, mechanic light dependent on, like, what kind of game it is. Like, for example, I'm thinking about, like, Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Thirsty Sword Lesbians is very, in tune with like emotionality of things, where like you would get strings or conditions based on your actual actions in the game, but it's not necessarily like mechanics heavy in combat. Like, should you get like more than 5 conditions, then you are like removed from the scene, right? But dependent on the GM, you never really get to that point because you're so invested in like how are you making your characters take strings. Me, for example, I created a very hot NPC and someone took 3 strings in 5 minutes because of how hot this NPC was. It was great. So I think it's all of it to say, it depends on the game, I think.
I totally agree. I think also there are experiences. I think there's funny attitude that is taken towards mechanics sometimes in discussions in tabletop spaces, partially because I think occasionally there are certain players and GMs out in the world that can use rules kind of as a cudgel to like beat the fun out of a situation, which, you know, in other words, rules as a culture have some pretty bad ambassadors, right? There are people that don't do a good job of making the rules seem fun. As someone who, you know, was part of a group of friends that designed the magic system for our LARP campaign, who's been doing game design and encounter design forever, to me, a rule, like a rule, is a toy, and that every rule should be fun, right? The purpose of a rule is to create some means of fun. So I love Nate of like, what is the different, like, if you don't need rules to have fun, why have rules at all? And I think that question comes into context if you look at rules as being fundamentally like toys, which is like, oh, I don't always want to play with the same toy forever. Having a variety of things that I use and adds variety to my play experience, because I have had incredible play experiences doing truly free-form role-playing, like no rules, where it's literally, this is a writing exercise. This is us just creative writing at each other extemporaneously.
Improv theater.
However, yeah, exactly. It's total improvisation. The thing a good rule gives you that doesn't, and it's one of the things that I think is the most beautiful about Dungeons and Dragons, or in fact any other like dice-based system, is there is something really beautiful about the moment where a group of friends, as storytellers, all look at each other and say, we are going to surrender narrative authority to an unfeeling plastic polyhedron. Like these characters that we love, we're going to put their fate in the hands of these dice that we know don't care about us. And that is the thrill of taking your hands off the wheel of a moving car. It's the thrill of a bungee jump. It is a leap of faith. You go, okay, this story that we love about and care about so much, we are going to take this leap of faith and put ourselves into a position where we actually don't know what's going to happen next. And I think that to me, that is something that you need mechanics for. Whether it's dice or it's playing cards or it's one of those little birds that, you know, dips onto a keyboard or, you know, drinks water, whatever system, whatever little gizmo you have, that is something you need mechanics for to be able to do that.
Because like the instant messenger, when you're telling these stories over instant messenger, there isn't that drama, that twist, that the randomness that die throws at you. That extra drama and tension that's created is lacking from when you're in your live journal collaborative storytelling group.
I will say the rules for me. I love what you've both said about this. Like they facilitate surprise, obviously, in a way that can make for incredible stories. And they can, like, obviously they can be the way to facilitate challenges. If what you're interested in a scenario is, like, this may or may not work, and our choices are going to have some effect on it, and it, you know, deciding whether it does or doesn't work will be up to something that is theoretically impersonal. But I will say one thing that, like, as someone who loved writing, like, the email sim was just very much like, you would write what you did, and you kind of hoped that it seemed like a reasonable amount. But one thing about that form of storytelling, and this might just come from being like a shy person, but choosing your moments of glory when you have all of the choices in front of you can feel fraught. because you don't want to have too many moments of glory, but you don't want to have no moments of glory. And you're not exactly sure what the right balance is. And that is one thing that, like, if you roll a 20 on your D20 when you need to hit something, that's a great moment of glory for you. And you don't have to worry that, like, oh, am I taking up too much space in this moment? Everyone is on the exact same page about it. And that's sort of hyper-focusing in on one tiny element of being a player, but it's one of the things I think that the rules give you is, like, you don't got to worry about that. You put yourself into the situation and the dice said you are going to shine, and then you get to add your flair and your narration and whatever, and you still want to balance your time at the table with everyone else. But I don't know. That's a nice thing that you get out of the rules as well.
And you get those ones also.
Which makes you more creative as a storyteller, figuring out why it's okay to sometimes have things not work, which some of us may have had a learning process with. That can lead to nice places.
Well, it certainly keeps you engaged when you're the game master. Not only can you not control your players, you can't control the dice either, right? There's so many elements that are just when you have this wonderfully laid plan, something goes awry, and that's it. It changes your expectations and it keeps everything. It's just there's nothing like it. It's magic. What about when you guys are writing, be it a campaign or an adventure? How much did the mechanics play a part in that writing for you? Is it narrative first and then mechanics? Is it mechanics drive, or is it vice versa? Does it depend on what you're doing? Like, what's the relationship?
I'll jump in and say that I think there is an absolute interplay there, right? Depending again on the system that you're running, but in Dungeons and Dragons, for example, I think that you get burned a couple times as like a young dungeon master if you try to ignore the importance, the mechanics in the narrative of your storytelling. Yeah. Where you're like, oh, I have a badass idea for a magic item that I'm going to give to my brother's character, and he's going to love it. He's going to just love it. And you give a magic item, and you realize he never uses the magic item because you built it in such a way that can't use any of his character's core abilities with it. It's not really well suited. It's like almost always mechanically making his character worse. So anytime his character takes the weapon out to use it, he's now being penalized or suffering as a result of that, right? So in other words, the only thing that would be motivating him to do it is to kind of like make you less sad metagaming. Like, please use the weapon I made you for your birthday. The place to be in. So like, okay, good legendary sword, how do I make it actually legendarily powerful? Am I cutting out a little bit? If this boss fight is supposed to actually make sense, if you're fighting the villain of the campaign, it's going to help the feeling of that epicness at the end of your campaign if that fight almost kills all your players, and how do you engineer that? How do you make that happen? So I think, mechanics are a big, these worlds are realities and they are governed by a certain element of physics. And in our world, we have the benefit of real physics. In this world, there's a little bit of design needed to make things make sense.
So they're narrative or dramatic leverage for you, the mechanics.
Yeah, I definitely think so. So, spoilers for Death to Divinity. If you have not watched Death to Divinity, this is a spoiler for episode 11, 12? I don't know. All right. My character, Adriel, really wanted to save someone. She's a cleric, but did not have the spell she needed to save this person. And so I bargained with our GM and said, if I use up all of my remaining spell slots, which was like 6, can I divine soul and save this person? And that was my bargain. And she let me do it, right? And so like using the mechanic of spell slots to equate like magical power, right? the narrative there is that Adriel as a character is expending all of her magical energy in order to like save this person. However, I had to roll con saves and arcana saves to see how well I could handle that magic and how powerful that magic was. And so it turned out that the magic was extremely powerful, but Adriel could not control it. And so someone else in the room had to like intervene in order to like stop her from like exploding essentially with like radiant energy, right? And so like that's a really good way to like examine on like how mechanics don't necessarily take away from the story. Like you rolling quote unquote badly never takes away from the narrative, it just gives you more sauce. There's more to play with, right? If you won all the time, it would be boring, right? If you had nat 20s all the time, it would be boring. The whole point of like using dice as a system or whatever other system you want to use is to give you room to play to find out, which is something that I learned as a player this season, because I would go in with like a plan because I'm a very analytical person. And so I had like a whole like 2-week stint where I was working on like as a player, learning how to like play to find out rather than like coming in with a plan, right? Because like my character knows things that I know, right? But there are some things that she doesn't know and does not understand. And so, yeah.
Play to find out is also just really good advice for a game master, right? Just remember, don't set anything in stone. Play to find out. Set the situation and play to find out. Like that's the point of being at the table. Play to find out. Can't say it enough. Love that. What about you, Amy? Any thoughts on mechanics driving narrative and vice versa?
I think I tend to approach things story first, although the mechanics are very helpful when I'm stumped, if that makes sense. Yep. If I've hit a wall of like I don't exactly know, then I can, especially since like I've been playing forever, but I've only been dungeon mastering for a couple of years, so it's a skill set I very much feel like I'm still building. And if I'm sort of like not sure what happens here, I can run through a little mental checklist of like, what are the 3 pillars of D&D? Did I forget one? Maybe I can do something with it. And oh right, traps are a thing. You know, it gives you a roster of things to add. And I find like that can be true across games. I think the best mechanics feel invisible to you when you're playing. They feel natural and inevitable. Like if you've played Fiasco, which is a game where basically you play terrible criminals most of the time, like a Coen Brothers movie. You're pulling off a heist and it goes wrong every time. But like you never know exactly how it's going to go wrong. And like it becomes sort of invisible to you. It's just a few like D6s here and there that are nudging you in different directions. And it again facilitates all of that kind of surprise. And those are specific to the world of Fiasco, but they suggest the direction that you want to go with it. So I don't know, the mechanics are doing some of the work of story, and that's all the best systems from Lasers and Feelings to Pathfinder and D&D have this, like the story is the mechanics and the mechanics are the story, and it all sort of rolls into a beautiful soup.
A synergistic soup of narrative fun. Love it. So, Amy, you were talking earlier about not hogging moments of glory or sort of knowing how many to have, and that's, you know, I've been lucky enough to play some D&D with you, and you were very generous at the table, right? You're very conscious of like making other players shine and do all this, you know, giving a lot of yourself. And I've seen Brennan and Jude, I've seen you guys play, and you were generous at the table. Do you have any tips for people on how to be generous at the table? Like, is there anything? Because I think it's so important to be, you know, you're doing it as a group. It's not trying to not be about you. Like, what? Do you have any tips for our viewers on how you're so generous at the table?
What a wonderful compliment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pay attention to the people that you play with, who you notice are like, because I feel like I learned that from the people that I have been lucky enough to play with. I loved the way I saw them set other people up, and then I just tried to copy it forever. I think we also, it sounds like all 3 of us have some performance training. And the thing that especially like I as an actor always struggled with in those classes is that weirdly the toughest thing to learn as an actor is to listen. Because especially if you're like me and you're like, you know what's great? Words. I get to say them. That's actually only a small part of what acting and performance is, and listening to other people is like the iceberg under the water of the work you're doing there. And once you figure out how much better things can get, like, it becomes easier to practice that skill of listening. I don't know. Nothing will fix it if you don't want to share the table, but wanting to, and then just sort of checking in and paying attention around the table will sort of take you along this road without, I don't know. I guess I'm saying I have no practical advice, other than I believe in you. And if you want to do it, it's going to happen, because essentially if you are hoping everyone has a good time and trying to listen, I feel like that's going to show.
Well, listening
Yeah.
is the practical advice. That's
Yeah. If you're like me and struggled really hard with being generous at the table, my DM, Katie May, who is our DM for Dex Divinity, actually created like a system for us, because we have some new D&D players in Dex Divinity, which you wouldn't know if you watched. I beg you, go watch episode like 9 and tell me who the 2 new players are. You wouldn't be able to tell me who they are. But we created this system called Gifts and Pillars, which is essentially like, for actors, creating your objectives, right? What are your objectives in the campaign? And then we have like a Notion document with everyone's pillars, so that everyone knows what everyone else is fighting for. So that way, in game, if there's ever an opportunity to like lift someone up or push someone in that direction, we have the knowledge as players that, oh, this person wants to chase this. For example, in this season, someone wanted to join a specific guild, and my character did not. But instead of my character saying, no, don't join that guild, she was just like, if you join the guild, I will support you. I'm just not joining that guild with you. Because there were 2 different trajectories. What this did for us was allow us, if some of us are more analytical, and so this allowed us to actually think about our characters on a more like 3D level, instead of just like when we're at the table. And doing this helped us embody our characters more. There's a very clear shift in the dynamic at the table between like the earlier episodes and the episodes after we did this as a group.
so. This wasn't a session 0. You guys did
No,
this
this
part
was-
way.
Yes, this was just like a thing in the Discord, because after a session, every session, we do this thing called Stars and Wishes. I don't know if anyone else does this, but I know that a few other people do it, but it's just like a check-in. And so a few of us were feeling like very muddy about our character choices, and we didn't really understand why. And so Katie May came to us and was just like, hi, here are all these things. I want you to do them. And we were like, okay. And we did them, and it has allowed us to create a more stronger table dynamic, because now we all really understand like where everyone is coming from, and we're not like stepping on each other's toes in the process, which is really important.
If you can know what the other players' goals are, it's much easier to support those goals. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love this.
Katie May is great, and I love her, and that's my contribution to the table this evening.
Well, it sounds like she was listening, right? She was taking Amy's
Yeah, they
advice,
were
and she was
listening.
listening. She was like,
Yeah, they were listening, you know?
yeah.
It's so important to have a dungeon master who like can look at all of us as a group and be like, yes, you're very strong in this area needs work, and not in a like degrading or berating way, just in a, hey, you can improve in this way, and I want to help you do that, right? Because we're a team. And I've been so fortunate to be at tables where dungeon masters are like, hi, we're a team, rather than like, hi, I'm in charge, do what I say, you know? But yeah.
Love it. What about you, Brennan? Any advice on how to be generous at the table? How to share moments of glory?
I feel like Amy and Jude covered it so well. Something that occurs to me is that I would say it's looking at, okay, like what does it mean to not be a generous player, right? Here's a circle of all the people that are non-generous players, right? I would say probably a very small slice of that is actually selfish people, right? Of people that are just like, oh, you're not very kind, right? That's probably a very small slice. I think the larger thing that's going on is people that just don't know how to be generous. Would be generous if they knew how, but are just having a hard time figuring it out. And if I had to say what I feel like goes on the most, and I'll speak for myself, like growing up as a player, is that one of the hardest things about trying generous at the table is if you feel disconnected from the other characters.
Yes.
If you feel disconnected from them, which can happen for any number of reasons. It can happen because you don't know the people you're playing with that well. It can happen because you made all of your characters in isolation and your characters don't have any shared backstory. So you feel this weird thing where if you arrive at a game of D&D and you're very intimately familiar with your character's backstory, and then here's 4 randos, and it's like, okay, this guy's like a weird arsonist sorcerer, and this guy is a religious fanatic, and I guess this guy loves to steal. Okay, what a motley crew we have. And I think that so the lack of generosity in that situation, I go back in my head to when I used to teach improv, which is it's okay for the first thing to feel a little awkward. The first time you reach out from your character to try to form a friendship with another character, it may feel a little wooden. It may feel a little awkward, right? Like, you remember, I'll use a weird Lord of the Rings example. There's this weird thing that Gimli says at a certain point in the movie where he's like, nobody tosses a dwarf. And when he says it, you're like, what an insane piece of world building. That's crazy. Like, you just said that like that's a rule that we need to know about. And but a movie later, he has that beat with Aragorn where he's like, you're going to have to toss me. And it's this great moment of camaraderie. And I think that happens all the time, where in your first couple sessions as a D&D group together, you're going to have to start conversation. Your friend made a weird arsonist sorcerer. So you're like, you like starting fires, huh, Phil? Well, I got a can of beans. Do you want to cook some beans? And it's going to be like, what the hell are we talking about? This feels so awkward. This is insane. This feels so unnatural. But what you have to do is you have to do those awkward scenes that feel totally unnatural, because then 20 sessions after that, you're going to be looking at each other in a very quiet moment, and the kobolds over the hill are talking about something, and your characters will look at each other, and without saying anything, at the same moment, you'll both say, beans. Yeah. And you'll know at that moment, the reference will happen, and it will be like, oh, you have to lay the first layer of bricks, even if it's a little bit awkward. And then once you do that, the built-in character history will make generous play where you're constantly like connecting to and setting up your fellow players will happen more organically.
Let's have some beans. I'm in.
Beans, and you'll know what it means.
Just typing beans.
Beans.
Right now.
On that note, we need a word for our giveaway. I think we might have found our word for the giveaway.
I think it's beans.
I think it's beans.
Pretty sure.
So
that is also how you get a campaign where 2 years later that person is now like a sorcerer, arsonist / professional chef, and you can also trace it down back to that same like first thing where they were like, actually, you know what, new direction for my character, and you never know.
It's true. Well, and that's the fun stuff. When your character, in the very beginning, you don't really know where your character's going to go or what's going to happen, and that could be that can of beans is the thing that just shapes the whole trajectory. That wooden outreach of the can of beans suddenly like shifts the whole thing. Yeah. It's genius. All right, so what are they gonna win, Chris? What's going on with the beans?
Hey everybody! All right, so what we're doing right now is we're doing a giveaway for $50 of Pledge Manager credit for the Reliquaries Kickstarter we're running currently. You want to show them some of those reliquaries?
Sure, Chris.
Give them a look at that stuff.
The dwarf. Wait, he's not even on. Oh man. Oh jeez. Oh, we got technical difficulties. I inherited Amy's user errors here.
I thought his body fell off.
No, it's just I was trying to get his light up. Look at that.
Wow.
Going dragon eyes. Hey.
So pretty.
Beautiful dye in there. Also, side note.
Yeah, you start the beans now.
The chat is now active. If you only type beans in that first wave, type beans again just to be safe. You will not be disqualified if you type beans multiple times, so don't worry about it. You can type beans as many times as you want to, and you will still be eligible.
But it's hogging too many moments of chat glory.
Ooh.
That's fair, but we're not going to read this in the first place.
Beans as much you. Whew.
You said beans.
Here's all of that. I'm sorry.
All right, so type in beans and you get a chance to win $50 credit. While people are typing the beans, let's ask another question. So here's
ones? I'm sorry. What's going on with the D6s?
Oh, these are.
Should we say that we also have these dice on offer?
these are ability trackers, right? So they're little. There's a little sticker you can put on the bottom. It's a plaque, a removable plaque, so you can put on your different abilities. You put your rage or your key points or whatever, and then you can track it analog style. So this is for like if you have spell slots, you can line up 4 of them and track all your spell slots. You can track anything from Bardic Inspiration to whatever. So if you want to have an analog,
amazing. And my little superstitious impulse there. Sorry about that.
Right?
There's actually a very good reason.
And then there's we got a ability. This is a life dial, so you can use it for tracking something large like sorcery points or key points, or you can use it for playing magic, so you can track your life and then track your commander attacks up here. And yeah. Wait, what was your superstitious reason? What was the number?
I was trying to figure out why it seemed like you had them all on the ones, as if to portend bad luck, but actually it's just where you might count from in any number of totally reasonable use cases.
I was starting at 1. I wasn't suggesting that we all roll ones. You know what? Hey, wait. This is my favorite ones story. Where's the?
And he's off mic. Your favorite one story?
Yeah. So
I'm excited.
We got to work with a bunch of really cool dice creators on this, and Yanir, she's a one-woman force of nature. She makes these really beautiful handcrafted dice with it's lower and tighter. Oh, I can't get it there. You got it. I got it. So she made this. She made some sets of dice for us that are all inspired by a D&D game. But I was dismayed because we were putting the stuff in the reliquaries. You always put the high number up, but the high number was they were all solid black, and these things have these beautiful it's like a cosmic seascape floating in there and all this stuff. And I was like, well, why did you put it on the high number is just like pure black. Like I wanted to see all this beauty and whatever. And she said, well, because when you roll a 1, I want you to see something beautiful and take the edge off. Because when you roll the 20, you're already getting you're getting the reward of rolling the high number. But when you roll the 1 on these die, I want you to see like the most beautiful side on the one. I was like, well, that is genius.
That's wonderful.
So cute.
Yeah, she's amazing. All of her dice are inspired by her their D&D campaign. She made dice so she could keep the fun of D&D going. She would do stuff from each session. She'd inspire a new set of dice from the home game would inspire what she was building. It's pretty amazing. She's on Yanir.com. You can see her work. She makes some jewelry also, cool stuff.
That's YANIIR.
In case you didn't know how to spell Yanir, because that's a lot of vowels in there. All right, so let's let me get another question for you guys. While we're waiting for people to type in their beans.
I feel we got all the beans we're gonna get.
We got all the beans. Should we just roll the giveaway?
We can just roll it now so we don't forget about it. Because
all right, let's roll the giveaway.
Getting reminded like 20 minutes from now that we have to roll it. All right, let's roll this.
Should I roll it?
This is for all the beans.
You got it.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
14.
Tara Mupp.
Congrats, Tara.
Yay!
Yay!
Is Tara your friend? Jane?
No, I was congratulating the winner.
Okay. Well, Tara's your friend now.
Yeah, now.
So, here's a question. When you all of you play in stream games or played stream games, maybe do it for a living. Do you have any advice for people who are starting up a stream game or just stream for the first? What's different about playing on stream versus just playing in your basement? Is there anything that you should be mindful of? Or don't stream?
I will jump in and say that I think that there's not. I have rarely perceived a difference in my home games versus actual play. Because I think that for a lot of people, they have always sort of modeled their home games in a very highly narrative / cinematic, wanting their home games to be as much like living in an epic story, living in a fairy tale, living in a movie or a novel as possible. I think that some of the only key stuff to keep in mind with actual play versus other stuff is that there are a handful of things that are deeply engrossing as players that are less engrossing for an audience. And there's just a short couple of things like that. Yeah, whether you get around them via editing or you just choose to emphasize them less in actual play, things that I love to do as a player. Listen, I love planning as a player. I'll plan all the live long day. If you give me a castle, I will true story. I run a high fantasy heist for a group of my going on 12-year long home game that I've been running. And we spent 6 hours on a Sunday morning with all my friends, totally out of character, combing through 3.5 source books to crack this gnomish mansion, just researching spells that could get the job done. That was one of the most fun mornings of my life, as all of my friends were just like, okay, for the arcane gate, I'm thinking anti-magic shell. But literally one of the things they came up with was there was a true seeing scrying. So what they did was they had they had a space that they needed hidden. They were magic criminals. So they air fog cloud spell that they needed to work in and made the fog made all of them visible. So it they see invisible, and if they have true, they'll just see fog because we summoned fog there. So they'll see through the illusion. So that's a long roundabout story. All of which was to say that was 8 hours of intense planning that was so fun and would be unwatchable. Would be no fun for anybody. Yeah, a quick unsubscribe. So I think that kind of stuff is where actual play and home games differ a little bit. It's just a couple of things like planning and housekeeping and note taking that can be really, really fun in your home game, but maybe are not the most viewer friendly.
Love it.
I will say that there are differences for me in the games, and they preserve the things that I love about role-playing games do transfer over, which is why I enjoy so much playing on stream, but especially that I've spent the majority of my time in strictly live formats, like set start time, set end time, we take a break in the middle, but there was, it might sound silly, but after a long time of home games, you do not stop 45 minutes into the hour and a half block of solid play for people to go get snacks, usually on a stream game, or stop and talk about, the mix of in character and out of character is going to sometimes be a little bit different. The energy of making sure that you are focused on the game, not that in home games, the way that you give your energy to the table can look a little different from a stream game, where while it is still important that while things are going on, you want to be engaged and you want to be supporting each other, there is flexibility to stop and look something up in a book that if everybody can see you at the table is not necessarily going to work out in the same way for the viewing audience who are like, what is that person over there doing? It's small changes but the fact that you are on for that period of time. And I'm a known character breaker. I laugh at other people's scenes. I'm pretty much not we're staying in it the whole time. I like to think I don't ruin scenes with extra faces, but that's my way of being in a game most of the time is just hanging out and being a viewer for everybody else's scenes anyway. So there is a difference in the energy there. There is a difference in the pacing, and there is a difference in sort of that some level of responsibility you feel to the people at home where as much as you might want to spend 2 solid sessions planning something, if they're I gave you 3 hours of my life and the following didn't happen, there's a limit to how much you want to obviously feel beholden to what an audience is getting out of a game. But it does become a factor at a certain point where you're you know what? It might have been a little more fun for everyone if we had all gotten through to the action bit of this faster so we had a little more time to spend there. We might have had a little more fun. The people watching might have had a little more fun. And without that necessarily dictating your entire game as an artistic project, it's a voice that wouldn't necessarily exist. Now, granted, some of those factors can exist in a home game where like one player might not be having a good time if you didn't get to the combat. That's something to take into account in that sense that they're always shared experience. But there are changes when you go from sharing with 5 people to sharing with a much larger potential pool of people who don't all exactly know how everybody talks and what everybody's assumptions are. There is a just the wonderful benefits that come with getting to share your game with all those people, that come with trade-offs, that not everyone is going to understand what you mean by something, and not everyone is going to enjoy the same elements of your game, and you're going to find the right balance over time. And when it's working, it's the trade-off is so worth it, so much fun. But it is, to me, like it's a slightly different beast. That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
That was wonderful.
No, you're good. I also think that like streamed games when you're live versus like pre-recorded are also a very different beast as well, because you have the 6 players that are at the table plus the 7th player who is the audience, right? So like, for example, at Death to Divinity, we have a chaos bar, which is at every $250 like tip to the cast. A chaos event happens that otherwise would not have happened in the story at all. And so it is the audience, that is the form of audience participation, and that $250 gets split between all 6 of us. It's the way that we're paying each other, right? And so that has had a very big proponent on season 1 of Death to Divinity. There are things that have happened that would not have happened, and in the way that it was shaped. For specifically in episode 3, when the Chaos Bar was hit, changed who the Chaos Bar event affected, or who was involved in it. And so sometimes like that's also a thing, right? As the producer of Death to Divinity as well, like I have to be very mindful of like when energy is dropping at the table, so does everyone else, right? When to shift cameras, because we have moving cameras on D2D, so they're not static, they all move for specific scenes. And so like it's very exciting because I get to spend my Friday night playing games with friends and then watching my favorite TV show. It's great. But there's also that aspect of like understanding as a table that it is everyone's responsibility to make sure that the energy is up, not just the DMs, which is a responsibility in home games as well. But it's very different when the GM is like trying to like look something up for a spell, or like trying to like fix something that broke in our tabletop, whatever we're using for tabletop stuff, right? So yeah, stream games are just very different in the sense that like we're all hanging out and we're all vibing, but we're also like at an elevated state, right? We're all on, right? It's not the same thing at being at a home game and like chilling and like being in character, but like relaxing, right? We're all like in character, and like if we break character, that's fine. At our table, we don't really we don't really care all that much, because a lot of the times when we break character, it's to double check something, right? It's to like, do I have your consent to do X, Y, and Z, which is very important to us. Like, can I do magic on you is a very important thing at our table, right? Depending on the spell. It's how we've been able to foster like this idea of like informed consent in Dungeons and Dragons, especially at an off-M table. And how that doesn't necessarily detract from our story at all, but in fact enhances it, right? There's also like this sense of like, performed is the wrong word, but this sense of like camaraderie that has to like come across to the people that are watching you.
Yeah.
Because if that trust is not at the table and you're doing very like dangerous things, right? The audience is going to be very uncomfortable. It's the same way in theater where like your suspension of disbelief comes from the idea that the actors are safe, right? I can watch, excuse me, sir, outside honking your horn, I'm having a conversation. It's the same thing of like, if you're watching live theater and like someone's doing like stage combat, right? I'm not worried as a person that that person is getting hurt. I'm interested in the story. But if I, for a second, believe that that person is being actually injured, I'm no longer invested in your story. I am worried about the person.
Right.
And so D&D,
you're a genius. I've never heard anyone make that comparison. Sorry, that I'm gonna please finish, but that's so smart as a way to explain this. Please continue.
No, you're fine. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's something that I think about a lot because, like, as someone with theater background, like, and a lot of us do have theater backgrounds in doing D&D, but it's something that I explain to my audience a lot, which is like we watched what is his name? The man that plays The Witcher on Netflix. He did a video.
Henry Cavill.
Thank you, Henry Cavill. He did a video about like how a certain like sword scene went, in like how they filmed it, right? And I think that like that transfers to D&D. Consent is important in D&D when we're dealing with things like death and murder and mind control and emotion control, right? And trauma. Like these are characters who are going through a lot, who are going through the ringer, and you have to make sure that the people who are playing these characters are safe, which is why things like Stars and Wishes, Lines and Veils, all of those things are important, because character bleed happens way more often than anyone else wants to admit, right? Character bleed is something that like affects everyone in some degree. So yeah, that's my take on that.
You know, I thought lots of interesting bits in there, but something that resonated is worth repeating is that you're saying that, you know, the GM isn't fully responsible for everybody's fun at the table, right? All the players are responsible too. Like, you know, the GM doesn't have to entertain everybody single-handedly. Like, this is, you're all doing this together. Like, everybody's got to remember to pitch in their part and be engaged and be in it and be lifting the thing up together.
Yeah.
There's an important reminder as a dungeon master, right? It's not all on you. Like, remember to empower and check with your players to get them going so that they can stoke the fires of the thing too. You don't have to carry it by yourself. I have a question that I want to ask everybody that comes on here, which is a common theme among all creatives, and certainly those of us here at the Forge, which is a question of artistic resistance, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, whatever. The sort of the thing. It turns out, you know, every human being, particularly those in creative fields, at some point face whatever form that is. Do you guys have any advice on conquering that, right? The self-doubt, the fear, the imposter syndrome, resistance, whatever you we'll call it, or whatever form it takes for each of you.
I can try to answer this. We'll see how this comes out feeling, but I promise this is intended as a comforting thought.
Oh boy.
Maybe for me, a thing that helped at one point was to reframe from conquering that to figuring out like my relationship with those fears. And that's, you know, true across a lot of areas of my life of like, am I always going to have nerves the night before a game? Can I finally recognize that that's what's happening? Once I recognize it, maybe the nerves don't go away, but I know what's happening. It's the night before a game. I think I'm terrible and have forgotten how to dungeon master. I panic text a friend or two. They remind me that I do this every time. And that sort of, it maybe would be cool if I could be like, someday those nerves will be gone, but like they're not gonna, and maybe I wouldn't be who I am if they did, you know? Maybe
process.
There's things, yeah. And
the process.
So, but it absolutely is possible for me to learn to recognize that that's what's happening and not spend a bunch of time the night before a game trying to seriously answer the question of whether or not I have any idea how to dungeon master. Be like, oh, that's not tonight's question. That we're going to put that one on hold. Maybe we'll revisit it after the game. Maybe we won't. But to be able to sort of, and you know, this is just general, like me letting all my baggage fly, but like it has helped me in art a lot to be like, it's okay if that fear is, I'm never going to be totally without it, but I get to decide how I respond to it. And that it like, it's not going to stop me. It didn't stop me last time. So maybe it doesn't stop me next time, and it won't stop me the time after that. And that, for me, is good news.
Love it. And that's what we're here to talk about the baggage. I mean, right now, at this moment, that's what this is about. It's like, show that you're not everybody out there, you're not the only one that has self-doubts and has this stuff. Like, this is a human thing. What about, anybody else have any techniques for tackling that stuff? Or just acknowledging it in Jimmy's case, which is the first great step?
I mean, I can go. So one thing that did happen, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but one thing that did happen during the season was a lot of us were feeling very like muddy about our characters and our choices. And like for me, like as someone who has ADHD, it can be very, very like a lot when you think that you're like the worst person at the table, right? And so like the like quote unquote like solution, I guess, is to like have conversations with the other people at your table and your dungeon master and like express those things to them and say like, hey, I feel this way. I feel like I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And like either it can just be like emotional support, which is great. You should be emotionally supporting each other when you're playing a game like D&D or TTRPGs. That can be a very like emotionally like not draining is the wrong word, but like very emotionally charged, right? Or for me, what it involved was like 2 weeks of doing like a bunch of like RPG character worksheets from this workbook that my dungeon master picked specifically for my character. And then working with my dungeon master to kind of like hone in on like the things that still were like wishy-washy. Like kind of like homework. I was a very nerdy kid, and also like it helped me a lot though to be like, hey, this is exactly like what my character wants. It'll help me make informed decisions and choices, which then prevents me from being like, I'm a bad player at the table because I don't know what I want, because I do know what I want, right? And so like even if I'm making choices that I don't think are necessarily like 100% in character, I can still be like, oh, this happened from this, right? Imposter syndrome does not go away. I think every person who like is in the creative field is going to have imposter syndrome in one form or another. And it kind of like Amy said, you kind of have to like look at it and be like, all right, hi. And then just like, hi, hello, I guess you live here for now. And like, and deal with it, which sucks, but like it that is like part of the battle. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Love it. What about you, Brennan? Do you have any guidance?
Yeah, it's just a very short thing, which is just that if you're DMing, you're playing with your friends. This is the little analogy I like to use to talk about how to reframe these ideas. Because obviously, I think Amy and Jude both said you're always going to struggle with this, but this is just my little mental image. It's just my little palm tree swaying on a beach that I can meditate on and get back to center. Which is the analogy is, do you know how bad free cookies have to be for someone to complain about them? They're free cookies. They're free. You made cookies. And all of my friends who bake always show up with freshly made cookies. And they're like, I didn't have the right sugar. There's a mistake. And I was like, unless this is poison, it's going to be my favorite thing I ever ate. Unless this literally kills me dead on the ground right now, it'll be my favorite person for as long as I live. And it's true for DMing and D&D as well. Only the person making the cookies is going like, it said turbinado sugar, but I only had, you're the only person that's doing that. It's totally in your head. And everyone who's eating them is going, this is the greatest baker who's ever lived, right? Because it's free. You're playing with your friends. Especially if you're running a game and you're doing prep work, you are doing something. It is like cooking a meal for people you love. It's a thing done with love. No one is going to just know with all that imposter syndrome that not only is it like an inaccurate assessment of yourself because you are good. I think the other half that I focus on that helps me is it's not the standard that you think it is. Your internal standard is this incredible self-critic that nobody else holds for you, right? It's you're making free cookies. People are going to find them delicious.
I love free cookies. That is it's brilliant. It's so easy to remember too. It's such a good little
free cookies.
Little mnemonic. So my final question before we take a couple from the audience is, how can we? There's been in gaming there's been quite a history of gatekeeping and nonsense. So how do we ensure as a community we can keep improving on making sure the table is a place for everyone, to sit down and play? How do we make it as inclusive as possible? Is there anything we can do as a community?
I think us as a community need to uplift the people that are like doing the work, right? Like, not like, I of course will say Dutch Divinity because it's my baby, right? We have a table of all fat, all queer babes who live unapologetically in a world that is not fat phobic, with a lot of people of color at our table as well, right? Like, I'm Latinx, Kita and Lyric are both Black, you know, like, that was very important to us. We also have people who are neurodiv at the table, who are disabled at the table, and like that was also very important to us. But there are other shows as well who like deserve love and support. For example, Transplanar RPG is an all trans POC led D&D show on Twitch, who are in the middle of their 4th arc at the moment. And so like finding those shows that are like who are already doing the work of making the space at the table, right, and like uplifting them so that more people see them, I think is probably one of the best things that you could do as someone who engages in TTRPG content, right? Because so often I see a lot of TTRPG content that is like all white males, which there's nothing wrong with that. And not to say that they're doing anything wrong by like having those shows, but there are so many other shows as well that are doing an extraordinary amount of work that have a sliver of that support. So yeah, yeah.
I'll just jump in and say, yeah, I think that Jude just said it, which, you know, uplift those people, just to make it, it's, you know, include people. Like I think that like the question, Nate, is like, how do we make it more inclusive? And I don't say this in a glib way. I say it because it's literally the thing to do, which is, okay, to make it more inclusive, include people. Include them. The crew behind the camera needs to be diverse. The cast in front of the camera needs to be diverse. There needs to be a diversity of opinion making from a, you know, as broad and inclusive and welcoming a community of, you know, diverse and divergent voices as possible. And you know, it's the opportunities to do that are usually in the foundations of whatever you are creating. So it's even more incumbent as you are beginning a venture, as you are thinking about starting a show, right? That is the time, I think, to really double down and like live out those values, which it literally is just as simple as include people. It's you know, that is the key word.
Inclusion starts by including people.
I mean, it
free
really
cookies.
is the case. Like, if you can, like, I mean, there's the thing about what the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. The second best time is today. Like, if it is something that you discover, like, as I hope we all are constantly discovering things we can be more mindful about. Like, the best time to put that in practice was yesterday, but the second best time is now. Like, if you can, I think, Brennan, it is amazing advice to, if it really is a priority for you to have a diverse and welcoming table, which I think it should be, make sure it's a priority from day one. And if you have a chance to do that, if things like, you know, life has all kinds of surprises it can throw at you, but like putting a priority on that, from my experience so far, will show and will pay off. And it turns out it's actually not as complicated as you might think, because the things that are important to you are going to be the things that are important to you. And, you know, be ready to make mistakes and learn from them and grow as a person. And I will say, like, I'm weirdly, like, having been in this space, in like nascent online spaces for a long time, I have seen certain sides of gatekeeping and learned other things that like I wasn't mindful enough about. And I have like all of this in the backlog now, and it has given me very strong opinions about like community is active, not passive. If you have an unmoderated chat, you have a cesspool. It's not good for the people on the channel. It's not good for the other people in the community. No. The people who are going to stick around for that environment are not necessarily the people that you want giving, like, to be sharing your energy with. And you are losing people that you do want to be sharing energy with if you do not actively make sure that they know that this is a space where they're going to be welcome. And that, it's so important. And it's not easy, but it's very important.
Active communities.
Oh yeah. There's a great old metaphor, Amy, that's exactly what you're saying. A space that is welcoming to wolves and sheep is not welcoming to sheep. Right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if your space is safe for predators, you have not created a safe space. You have to have moderation. There has to be strict guidelines. There has to be an ability to actually make that space meaningfully safe, especially for the people that most warrant and deserve that kind of protection, and to have a community and space made available to them.
Love that.
Absolutely. I think that'll also, I've stopped saying safe space for everyone, because my space is not a safe space for everyone. Get the fuck out. Get out if you are a transphobe or a homophobe or engage in active oppression of people. I do not want you in my space. My space is a space that is welcoming and inclusive and uplifts people and is queer centric and trauma informed, right? And so sometimes people are pissed about that. They're just like, what do you mean I can't be here? And I'm like, sorry, bud, you can't be here. There's so many other spaces on Twitch that you can go vibe. This is not one of them. And I think that that's also really important.
I love how you frame that.
A learning process for me from the 90s internet, where growing up as a bullied kid, I put this sort of everyone is welcome value above all else. And I look back at some of these stories and man, these were just friend groups, but we kept around people who had hurt our friends because we thought that it was so important that nobody get banned from this space. And looking back, it's what were we doing to ourselves? We would have been so much better off if we were willing to accept that, okay, we don't have to go full on, we are holding tryouts to get into our sorority, with no offense intended to people who had good experiences in the Greek system. But we don't, you don't automatically become that just by exercising the bare minimum. Right. You know what? You are maybe not a welcome part of this community. That has to be, it was a mental transition from actually, the rest of us aren't safe unless we are allowed to draw that fence in these cases.
Get
these dang wolves out of here. And I think he said as well, there is a certain thing too of I know those voices that you're talking about that have that idea of are we saying there's no chance for learning here? There's no, whatever chance for redemption or whatever. And I remember being in one meeting in a community that was doing that. And a friend of mine said my favorite thing, which is why does that person's redemption have to happen here? Can't that happen on down the road?
Literally anywhere else.
Literally anywhere else.
Why are you making the person they hate stand here and listen to them maybe slowly work out hating them less? That's a weird, work on it over there.
Yeah, my friend was so funny. Yeah. Yeah. It's really hey, I hope they learn. I hope they grow. I hope they redeem themselves. On down the bunny trail. So long, friend. You can do that wherever you end up next, because it's not going to happen here. I totally believe in that. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, I love that. This is awesome. Well, let's take a couple. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I haven't really seen any over this.
Soaking up all this wonderful wisdom.
It's just people have just been responding to what's been said. They've been pretty into it, but
you guys are really. I can't thank you enough for coming on and being so open and vulnerable and earnest and bringing your baggage and sharing it with everybody and sharing your geekery and love of stories, and it's been really delightful to have you guys here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We'll do it again.
This was a blast.
A
Thank you so much.
joy and honor. Such a dang hoot. Thank you.
Woo. So, for everybody watching, we have our Reliquaries Kickstarter ends in
questions
22 hours. We got a question? We got a question. Coming in fast, coming in hot. What do we got?
Rainy Day Jules says, so my group used to meet in person until, so we've been playing, I'm not sure what they're referring to. So we've been playing over Discord, and since a lot of us have bad internet, we usually keep to just voice calls. and I feel like it's so hard to keep up with energy when I'm not even looking at my friends. I was wondering if you'll have tips for online games. Which I guess is a thing. Like, I think actually...
like, how do you connect
Brennan,
without seeing people's faces?
well, I guess that's the thing is, Brennan, you, I believe when it initially hit, you, at Dimension 20, you guys did move over to doing remote games for a bit. Did you, like your table dynamic in, the first seasons of Fantasy High and, like all that stuff was like definitely like a very notable part of the show. Did you feel any particular growing pains, and did you guys have to do anything to like work through that?
Were there techniques that helped?
I was shocked at how much the rhythm and chemistry was still there over the remote medium. I think we were all worried that, like, oh no, are we going to have lost something special in the sauce that we otherwise wouldn't have? But it was really, really special and fun and still there. If anything, I don't think we lost anything in the performance. I just think that it is challenging to maintain energy as a performer over Zoom. In other words, I didn't notice a loss of quality in the performance on screen, but I felt more tired at the end of a day of Zoom filming because I think it just takes a little bit more. You got to put a little bit of pepper on it when you're kind of like, you're not feeling the physical closeness and energy of the people that you're performing with. So that was it. I was actually very pleasantly surprised at how much the chemistry was still there in remote medium. But definitely was psyched to get back to the Dome for my own personal stamina reasons, just because I think that being solo in a room under hot lights is a very different story.
It's a lot more work trying to find those social cues when you're not like in the room with people. Like,
Well,
you really have to like.
Yeah.
Well, and crosstalk isn't ideal when you're shooting with a bunch of people at a table, but it's significantly harder finding those rhythms, like, or at least was a separate learning process, I guess, for me, where like I initially was like, I am never gonna like playing online the way I like being at a table. And the truth is I love being at a table, but I guess I can admit now, like it just took some practice to get used to like doing it online, and now, sometimes I get to play with people who I am unlikely to ever get to be in the same space with, and that's a totally worthy trade-off. So I was kind of just being a baby about not wanting to learn a different set of table energy cues. But I will say to the person who is saying, like, they are having trouble with audio only. Like, I know some people prefer audio only because they don't want to worry about their faces, but if you're used to getting facial cues, that can be rough. I don't know if this would help, but potentially, like, finding different audio rhythms if you are just in audio, of being like, I don't know, more of a formal call out at the beginning and end of your turn, or like little other rituals of checking in that can sort of help you, like, trying to find the right thing for your eyes to settle on that's not undistracting but not too distracting. I'm sure you've tried a lot of these things, but like there may just be some experimentation you can do that will sort of help you to trick yourself into replacing that feedback that's missing from looking into everybody's eyes. I don't know.
It's a good one.
I know that also, like, if you're doing audio only, like, if you have, like, a Discord server, right? Ways to keep up hype between sessions, right? Our Discord for the first month and a half of Death to Divinity looked like a Tumblr 2012 RP, and I'm not freaking kidding. So we have all of the Discord channels for our characters, all of the Discord channels for all of the relationships that were either canon or not canon. There were text RPs happening that went up on the Patreon. Like, there are lots of ways. A lot of us made playlists. A lot of us made, like, Pinterest boards. Ways to kind of, like, think about your characters and get excited about your characters. So that way, when you are going to session and it is audio only, you're more excited to be at the table. But also, if you have, like, a show chat, because we have a show chat. I know that a lot of people do. You can do it through Zoom or whatever, but we have like a specific like show chat channel in our Discord where like when people are not talking, they're gossiping about what's happening in the Discord. And so you as a player can see that people are gossiping about what's happening, which I think is hilarious, and also gives you something to do if you're not actively like in a scene.
Love it. Cool. Well, let's call it a show. It's been since 8:30. You get out. thank you again, everybody, for giving us your time and hanging out, sharing words of wisdom. And thanks to everybody for watching. We couldn't be doing the show without you. And anything else we need to thank people for?
Man, I don't think so. We have a lot of things to thank people for, but I don't want to make everybody else sit. I don't want to make our guests sit here.
It's been 16 days for those.
We've got a whole stream tomorrow to go over it.
Right, we'll be back. Our last stream of the campaign is tomorrow night. Closing stream 7 to 8 p.m. Campaign ends tomorrow at 8 p.m. So if you want to get your reliquaries, get in now or get out.
Congratulations! It looks so good.
Congrats, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.